I was just a waitress. At least, that's what everyone thought when they walked into the small restaurant where I worked night shifts. The place was called Riverside Grill. It wasn't fancy. The lights were warm but dim, the chairs were old, and the smell of coffee and grilled sandwiches filled the air every evening. Most of our customers were regulars, truck drivers, office workers finishing late shifts, and sometimes tired couples who didn't want to cook dinner. Nothing exciting ever happened there. Until the night a black luxury car stopped outside the restaurant. I remember the moment clearly. It was raining lightly that evening. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, making the road look like a sheet of glass. I was wiping down table 7 when my coworker, Lily, rushed over to the window. "Emma," she whispered, "look at that car." I glanced outside. A sleek black car had just parked in front of the restaurant. It looked expensive, so expensive that it didn't belong anywhere near our little diner. The driver stepped out first. He opened the back door. Then a tall man in a dark suit stepped out of the car. Even from a distance, you could tell he wasn't ordinary. He walked with confidence, the kind of confidence that made people move out of his way without him even asking. Lily's eyes widened. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Is that?" Before she could finish, the restaurant door opened. The man walked in. The entire place suddenly went quiet. Conversations stopped. Forks paused in midair. Even the music playing from the old speakers seemed too loud. He looked around calmly, as if he was used to people staring at him. And then I recognized him. Not personally, of course. But I had seen his face before, on business magazines, news articles, and those giant billboards downtown. His name was Daniel Carter. One of the youngest billionaire CEOs in the country. Owner of Carter Industries. A company so massive that it owned everything from tech startups to luxury hotels. What was someone like him doing in our tiny restaurant? Lily nudged me. "Emma, go serve him," she whispered. "Why me?" "Because you're the best waitress here." I rolled my eyes. But I grabbed a menu and walked toward him. He had already chosen a table in the corner. The quietest spot in the restaurant. "Good evening," I said politely. "Welcome to Riverside Grill." He looked up. His eyes were calm, sharp, and surprisingly kind. "Good evening," he replied. His voice was deep but relaxed. "Can I bring you something to drink?" I asked. "Just black coffee," he said. "That's it?" "For now." I nodded and went to prepare his coffee. Behind the counter, Lily was practically shaking with excitement. "Emma, do you realize who that is?" "Yes," I said calmly. "That's Daniel Carter." "I know. He's literally worth billions." "Still just ordered a $3 coffee," I said. Lily laughed nervously. I carried the coffee to his table. "Here you go," I said. "Thank you," he replied. He took a sip, then looked around the restaurant again. For a moment, I thought he might leave. But instead, he reached into his briefcase. A few seconds later, another man rushed into the restaurant. He was younger, wearing glasses and holding a stack of documents. "Sorry I'm late, Mr. Carter," the man said quickly. Daniel Carter simply nodded. "Sit." The man placed the documents on the table. "These are the final contracts," he said. I was about to walk away when Daniel Carter said, "Mississippi." I turned back. "Yes? Could we get another coffee here?" "Of course." As I placed the second cup on the table, the assistant began explaining the documents. Once you sign these, the acquisition will be finalized, he said. Daniel Carter picked up a pen. He looked at the contract for a moment. Then he signed his name. And that's when everything changed. Because the moment I saw the signature, my heart stopped. I froze. My hands began to shake. I knew that signature. I had seen it hundreds of times before. On birthday cards. On letters. On the old notebook my father used to write in. It was identical. Exactly the same. I stared at the paper, unable to breathe. Daniel Carter noticed. He looked up at me. Is something wrong? He asked. Before I could stop myself, the word slipped out. That's my dad's signature. The table went silent. The assistant looked confused. Daniel Carter slowly put the pen down. What did you say? He asked quietly. I swallowed. That signature, I said, pointing to the paper. My dad used to sign his name exactly like that. For a moment, Daniel Carter didn't move. He just stared at me. As if he had suddenly seen a ghost. Then he said something that changed my life forever. Your father's name. He paused. What was it? What was it? Daniel Carter asked quietly. The restaurant suddenly felt smaller. Every sound disappeared, the clinking of forks, the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter, even the rain outside. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. My father's name was Michael Hayes, I said slowly. The moment I said it, something changed in Daniel Carter's face. It was subtle. But I noticed it. For a split second, the confident billionaire CEO looked shocked. His assistant frowned. Mr. Carter? He asked. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and studied my face carefully, as if searching for something familiar. How old are you? He asked. 23, I replied. His eyes narrowed slightly. Where did you grow up? In Brookfield. Now the assistant looked even more confused. Sir, should we continue with the contract? He asked nervously. Daniel Carter ignored him. Do you have a mother? He asked me. Yes, I said cautiously. And your father? I hesitated. He died when I was 12. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly around the pen he was holding. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then he closed the folder of documents. We'll finish this later, he said to his assistant. But sir. Later. The assistant quickly gathered the papers. Daniel Carter stood up. He looked at me again. What time does your shift end? He asked. I blinked. Midnight. He nodded. I'll wait. The assistant looked shocked. You're staying here? Yes. The assistant hesitated but eventually nodded and left the restaurant with the documents. The moment he walked out, the room slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed. Plates clinked again. But Lily rushed over to me immediately. What just happened? She whispered. I don't know, I admitted. Why is he staring at you like that? I glanced across the room. Daniel Carter was still sitting at the corner table, calmly drinking his coffee. But every now and then, he looked at me. Not like a customer. More like someone trying to solve a puzzle. The next 2 hours felt strange. I continued working, serving food, refilling drinks, cleaning tables. But I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Why did he react like that when I mentioned my father? And why did he want to wait until my shift ended? At exactly midnight, I untied my apron. Lily grabbed my arm. "Emma," she whispered dramatically. "That billionaire is still here." I noticed. "You're seriously going to talk to him?" "I guess so." "Be careful," she said. "I will." I walked toward the corner table. Daniel Carter stood up when I approached. "You're finished?" he asked. "Yes." "Good." He placed some cash on the table. Way more than the coffee cost. "Come with me," he said. My eyebrows lifted slightly. "Come with you, where?" "Just outside." I hesitated. He seemed to notice. Then he gave a small smile. "I promise I'm not kidnapping you." I laughed nervously. "Okay, that's reassuring." We walked outside together. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet. The black luxury car was still parked in front of the restaurant. Daniel leaned lightly against it. For a moment, he simply looked at the street. Then he spoke. "Your father," he said slowly. "Michael Hayes." "Yes." "How much do you remember about him?" "Not much," I admitted. "He traveled a lot for work. I remember he used to write letters to me when he was away." Daniel looked down at the ground. "And his handwriting?" he asked. "That's why I recognized the signature," I said. It was exactly the same. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Emma," he said. "There's something you should know." I suddenly felt nervous. "What?" "Your father didn't just travel for work." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Daniel looked directly into my eyes. "He worked for me." I blinked. "What?" "Years ago," Daniel continued, "when Carter Industries was still a small company, your father was my business partner." My mind struggled to process the words. "That doesn't make sense." "It's the truth." "But my dad wasn't rich." Daniel gave a sad smile. "Neither was I back then." I stared at him, trying to understand. "My father never mentioned you," I said. "I know," Daniel replied quietly. "Because what happened between us destroyed everything." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" Daniel looked away toward the dark street. 10 years ago, he said slowly, we were building the company together. We were close friends. Almost like brothers. So what changed?" I asked. Daniel's voice became quieter. "There was an accident." The word made my chest tighten. "What kind of accident?" Daniel looked back at me. "The kind that changes lives forever." He paused. "And the kind that made your father disappear." My heart skipped a beat. "Disappear?" I repeated. "You said he died." "That's what my mother told me." Daniel's expression grew serious. "Emma," he said softly. "What if I told you? Your father might still be alive?" "What if I told you, your father might still be alive?" The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "That's not possible," I said quickly. "My mother told me he died in an accident." Daniel Carter studied my face carefully. "And you believed it?" "Of course I did," I said. "I was 12. Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." Silence settled between us. Cars passed occasionally on the wet road, their headlights reflecting off the pavement. Finally, I spoke again. If my father is alive, why would my mom lie to me? Daniel sighed. Because the truth is complicated. I crossed my arms. Then explain it. He looked at the restaurant window behind me, where Lily was pretending not to watch us. Not here, he said. Then where? My office. I raised an eyebrow. You expect me to get in your car and go to your office in the middle of the night? A small smile appeared on his face. That does sound suspicious. Very. He thought for a moment. Then let's do this differently, he said. He reached into his wallet and pulled out an old photograph. The edges were slightly worn. He handed it to me. Look at this. I took the photo. My breath caught instantly. There were two young men standing in front of a construction site. One of them was Daniel Carter. He looked younger, thinner, and far less polished. But I recognized him. The other man? My hands began to shake. It was my father. There was no doubt. Same eyes. Same smile. Same warm expression I remembered from childhood. I looked up at Daniel. This is real? I asked. Yes. You and my dad actually worked together? 4 years. Why didn't he ever tell me? Daniel leaned back against the car again. Because the company we built became dangerous. My stomach tightened. Dangerous how? Money, Daniel said simply. Power. And people who wanted both. He looked down at the photograph. When Carter Industries started growing, we attracted attention. What kind of attention? The wrong kind. From who? Investors, he said. But not the good kind. I frowned. What does that mean? Daniel's voice lowered. People who didn't just want profit. They wanted control. And your father refused. The cold night air suddenly felt heavier. So what happened? Daniel hesitated. Then he said something that made my heart pound. They tried to force him out. How? They threatened him. My hands clenched around the photograph. Threatened him? At first it was business pressure, Daniel said. But eventually, it became personal. My voice shook. What are you saying? They threatened his family. The words hit me like a punch. Me? Yes. And your mother. For a moment, everything in my mind went blank. So, he left, I said slowly. Daniel nodded. He disappeared overnight. And everyone believed he died. I stared at him. You're telling me my father abandoned us, to protect us? Yes. Tears stung my eyes. But why didn't he ever contact us again? Daniel looked down. That part. I don't know. The wind moved quietly through the empty street. I looked at the photo again. My father's arm was around Daniel's shoulder. They looked happy. Like brothers. You said there was an accident, I reminded him. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. What happened? He hesitated again. Then he said quietly. The night your father disappeared, someone tried to kill me. My eyes widened. What? Our car brakes failed while we were driving down a mountain road. That's not an accident, I said. No, Daniel replied. It wasn't. What happened to my dad? Daniel looked directly at me. He saved my life. My chest tightened. How? He pushed me out of the car. My heart pounded. And him? Daniel's voice became softer. The car went over the cliff. I felt dizzy. That's when everyone assumed he died. But you think he survived? Daniel nodded slowly. Because there was never a body. The wind blew through the quiet street again. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I whispered the question that had been growing in my mind. If my father is alive, why are you telling me this now? Daniel looked at me with a strange expression. Because tonight, when you said that was your dad's signature. He paused. It reminded me of something. What? Your father used to sign every contract twice. I frowned. Twice. Yes. Once with his full name. And once with a small mark next to it. I quickly remembered the paper on the table earlier. There was a small mark next to your signature, I said. Daniel nodded. There always is. I stared at him. Wait. Are you saying my father taught you that? Yes. My heart raced. But that means... Daniel finished the sentence quietly. Someone out there is still using his signature. The realization sent chills down my spine. Which means... Daniel's eyes hardened. Someone knows exactly where he is. Someone knows exactly where he is. The words echoed in my mind. For years, I had believed my father was gone forever. Dead. A memory that only lived in old photographs and faded birthday cards. But now, there was a chance he might still be alive. I looked at Daniel Carter. If someone knows where he is, why haven't you found him? Daniel sighed quietly. I tried. 4 years. Then what happened? He looked down the empty street before answering. Every time I got close, the trail disappeared. That doesn't make sense. It does if someone powerful is hiding him. A cold feeling ran through me. The same people who threatened him? Daniel nodded. That's my guess. I crossed my arms, trying to think. But tonight you said something strange, I said. What? You said someone is still using his signature. Yes. And that means someone knows where he is. Daniel looked at me carefully. That's why I stayed tonight. To talk to me? Yes. But I don't know anything, I said. I haven't seen him since I was 12. Daniel studied my face for a moment. Maybe you know more than you realize. I frowned. What does that mean? Tell me something, he said. Did your father ever leave you anything? Anything? A letter. A message. A clue. I shook my head. No. But as soon as I said it, a memory flickered in my mind. Something small. Something I hadn't thought about in years. My dad had a notebook, I said slowly. Daniel's attention sharpened instantly. What kind of notebook? It was brown, leather. He used to write in it all the time. Do you still have it? I think so, I said. It's probably in a box at my apartment. Daniel straightened slightly. Emma, that notebook could be important. Why? Your father used to plan everything. If he disappeared on purpose, he might have left something behind. A strange mixture of hope and fear filled my chest. You really think so? It's possible. I looked toward the restaurant. The lights were still on inside. Lily was still pretending to clean the counter while watching us through the window. Okay, I said. Let's check. Daniel opened the car door. After you. I hesitated for only a moment before getting inside. The car was quiet and warm. Very different from the cold night outside. Daniel started the engine. Where do you live? He asked. About 10 minutes from here. We drove through the quiet streets. For a while, neither of us spoke. My mind was racing. If the notebook really contained something. If my father really left a clue. Everything could change. After a few minutes, we pulled up in front of my apartment building. It was small and old. Nothing like the luxury world Daniel Carter probably lived in. But he didn't comment. We walked upstairs together. When I unlocked the door, the familiar smell of my tiny apartment greeted me. Books on the table. A small couch. A lamp in the corner. Make yourself comfortable, I said awkwardly. Daniel looked around politely. Nice place. I almost laughed. Compared to what you're used to, this is probably a closet. He smiled slightly. Not everything important comes in a big building. I walked into my bedroom. Under my bed was an old storage box. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were old photos. School papers. Birthday cards. Memories from childhood. And then I saw it. The brown leather notebook. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I carried it back to the living room. Daniel's eyes locked onto it immediately. That's it? He asked. Yes. He leaned forward slightly. Open it. I sat down and slowly opened the notebook. Most of the pages were filled with writing. Numbers. Notes. Business ideas. My father's handwriting covered almost every page. Daniel watched carefully as I flipped through them. This is definitely his, he said. But then, something strange appeared near the back. A folded piece of paper. I frowned. That wasn't there before. Open it, Daniel said quietly. My fingers carefully unfolded the paper. Inside was a short message. Written in my father's handwriting. My heart started pounding as I read it. Emma. If you are reading this, it means someone finally found the notebook. And if that person is Daniel, then he kept his promise. I looked up at Daniel. His face had gone completely still. He wrote your name, I whispered. Daniel's voice was barely audible. Keep reading. I looked back at the note. My hands were shaking now. Emma, if Daniel is with you, you can trust him. He is the only person I know who will never stop looking for the truth. My throat tightened. Daniel slowly sat down. He knew, he murmured. Knew what? I asked. That one day we'd find this. I looked at the bottom of the note. There was one final sentence. And an address. When I read it, my heart nearly stopped. Because the address wasn't far away. It was in the same city. And the final line said something that changed everything. If you want to find me, come here. If you want to find me, come here. I read the final line again. Then again. My eyes slowly lifted from the paper to Daniel Carter. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Daniel leaned forward and gently took the note from my hands. His eyes moved across the handwriting carefully. "There's no doubt," he said quietly. "This is Michael's writing." My heart was pounding so hard it almost hurt. "So the address," I said. "It could actually lead to him?" Daniel looked back at the paper. The address was written clearly at the bottom. An old warehouse district on the edge of the city. He exhaled slowly. "I think your father expected this moment." "What do you mean?" "He knew someone would eventually find that notebook. And he wanted us to follow this clue." I tried to process everything. "But why wait this long? Why not contact us directly?" Daniel leaned back in the chair. "Because if someone was watching him, contacting you directly could have put you in danger." A chill ran down my spine. "You think those people are still out there?" Daniel's expression grew serious. "I never assumed they disappeared." Silence filled the apartment again. I looked at the address. My father had written it 10 years ago. 10 years. "Do you think he's still there?" I asked. Daniel shook his head slightly. "I doubt it." "Then why leave the address?" "Maybe it's not about the place," he said. "Maybe it's about what's inside it." I stood up suddenly. "Then we should go." Daniel looked at the clock. It was nearly 1 in the morning. "Now?" he asked. "Yes." "Emma, that warehouse district isn't exactly safe at night." "My father might be waiting for us," I said. Daniel studied my face carefully. The determination in my voice must have convinced him. After a moment, he nodded. "All right. But we're being careful." 10 minutes later we were back in the car. The city streets were nearly empty. Streetlights cast long shadows across the road. Neither of us talked much during the drive. My mind was racing with questions. Was my father really alive? Had he been watching me all these years? Why had he chosen this moment to reveal the truth? After about 20 minutes, Daniel slowed the car. "We're close," he said. The neighborhood looked abandoned. Old factories. Rusting fences. Dark buildings with broken windows. Finally, Daniel parked the car. "That's the address," he said quietly. I followed his gaze. An old warehouse stood at the end of the street. The building looked forgotten. Most of the windows were boarded up. One of the metal doors hung slightly open. My heart started beating faster. "This is it," I whispered. Daniel turned off the engine. "Stay close to me," he said. We stepped out of the car. The night air was colder here. Wind moved through the empty street, making a loose sign creak somewhere above us. We walked slowly toward the warehouse. Every sound felt louder. Our footsteps. The wind. Even my breathing. When we reached the door, Daniel stopped. He pushed it open gently. The metal groaned loudly. Inside, the warehouse was dark. Dust floated through the air. Old crates and broken equipment were scattered everywhere. Daniel pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness. We stepped inside. "Do you see anything?" I whispered. "Not yet," Daniel said. We walked deeper into the building. Rows of empty shelves lined the walls. Old wooden pallets were stacked in the corners. At first, it seemed completely abandoned. Then Daniel suddenly stopped. "Wait." What? I asked. He pointed the flashlight toward the floor. Fresh footprints. My heart skipped a beat. Someone's been here, I said. Recently, Daniel replied. We followed the footprints carefully. They led toward a small office room at the back of the warehouse. The door was closed. Daniel looked at me. Ready? He asked quietly. I nodded. He slowly pushed the door open. The room was small and dusty. But something inside made my breath catch instantly. A light was on. And sitting at the desk was a man. He looked older. His hair was gray now. But I recognized the face immediately. My heart stopped. Dad? I whispered. The man slowly looked up. For a moment, he stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Then his eyes filled with emotion. Emma, he said softly. The sound of his voice broke something inside me. Tears blurred my vision. You're alive, I said. Before I could move, Daniel suddenly stepped forward. His expression had completely changed. Michael, he said. My father looked at him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my father stood up slowly. A faint smile appeared on his face. Took you long enough to find me, he said. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. For 10 years I thought you were dead. Michael Hayes looked at him calmly. I had to disappear. Those people were still watching. Daniel frowned. Who? My father's expression darkened. The same people who tried to kill us. The room suddenly felt colder. Daniel's voice lowered. You mean the investors? My father nodded. They never stopped looking for the company. And now. He looked directly at Daniel. They're closer than ever. A heavy silence filled the room. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Dad, why did you call us here now? My father looked at both of us. His voice was serious. Because the truth is about to come out. What truth? Daniel asked. My father took a deep breath. The truth about Carter Industries. Daniel froze. What are you talking about? My father's eyes hardened. The company we built. He paused. Was stolen. Daniel's face went pale. Stolen, by who? My father said a single name. And when Daniel heard it, the shock on his face said everything. Because the person who stole the company was someone Daniel trusted more than anyone else. Stolen, by who? Daniel asked. The tension in the small office felt almost unbearable. My father looked directly at him. For a moment, it seemed like he didn't want to say the name. But then he did. Victor Lang. Daniel froze. Completely. The reaction on his face told me everything. Shock. Disbelief. And something deeper. Betrayal. That's impossible, Daniel said slowly. Victor Lang was a name I recognized. Even I had heard it before. He was the chief financial officer of Carter Industries. One of the most powerful men in the company. More importantly, he was Daniel's closest business partner. He helped me build the company, Daniel said. My father shook his head. No, Daniel. He helped you take it. Silence filled the room. Daniel stared at him. You're saying Victor was behind the attack? Yes. But why? Control, my father replied. He didn't just want to work in the company. He wanted to own it. I stepped closer. But Carter Industries belongs to you, I said to Daniel. Doesn't it? Daniel didn't answer immediately. His mind was clearly racing. Victor handles most of the financial operations, he said slowly. He manages the investors. And that's exactly how he took control, my father said. Daniel looked back at him sharply. What do you mean? My father opened a drawer in the desk. Inside were several old folders. He pulled one out and placed it on the table. Because Victor didn't just manipulate investors, he said. He manipulated the company itself. Daniel opened the folder. Inside were documents, contracts, financial statements, emails. His eyes moved quickly across the pages. The more he read, the darker his expression became. This can't be real, he whispered. What is it? I asked. Daniel looked up. These documents show Victor secretly transferred major shares of Carter Industries to shell companies. Shell companies? I repeated. Fake corporations, Daniel explained. They hide the real owner. And those companies belong to Victor, my father said. Daniel slammed the folder shut. Why didn't you show me this before? My father looked at him calmly. Because 10 years ago, I didn't have proof. But now you do? Yes. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This means Victor could already control a large part of the company. More than a part, my father said. Daniel slowly looked back at the documents. Then he whispered something that made my stomach drop. He might actually own it. The room went silent again. But if that's true, I said, why hasn't he removed you as CEO? Daniel's eyes narrowed. Because I'm still the face of the company. Public trust. Brand value. My father nodded. Exactly. Victor doesn't want to replace you. He wants to control you. A cold realization spread through the room. Daniel had been running the company. But someone else had been pulling the strings. 4 years. Daniel looked at my father again. Why reveal all this now? My father leaned forward. Because Victor is about to make his final move. What move? My father slid another document across the desk. Daniel picked it up. His eyes widened instantly. This is tomorrow's board meeting agenda. Yes. Daniel read the document carefully. Then his voice dropped. He's planning a vote. For what? I asked. Daniel looked up at us. To remove me as CEO. My chest tightened. So tomorrow. Victor takes complete control of Carter Industries, Daniel finished. Silence filled the office again. Then Daniel slowly stood up. His expression had changed completely. The shock was gone. Now there was only determination. Not if we stop him first, he said. My father gave a small approving nod. That's why I called you here tonight. Daniel looked at him. You knew this meeting was coming. Yes. And you've been waiting all these years for this moment. My father's eyes moved toward me. Not just for the company, he said quietly. For her. I felt my throat tighten. For me? My father nodded. I promised myself that if I ever came back, it would be when I could finally protect my family. Emotion filled my chest. But Daniel spoke again. If Victor realizes you're alive, Michael, he'll come after you again. My father smiled faintly. Then it's a good thing we're not running anymore. Daniel looked at both of us. So what's the plan? He asked. My father closed the folder slowly. Tomorrow morning, he said, we walk into that board meeting together. And we expose Victor Lang in front of everyone. Daniel nodded. And if Victor tries to stop us? My father's eyes hardened. Then the war for Carter Industries finally begins. Morning came faster than any of us expected. None of us had slept much. The small warehouse office where we spent the night felt tense and quiet as the first sunlight filtered through the dusty windows. I watched my father and Daniel Carter sitting across from each other at the desk. 10 years apart. 10 years of secrets. And now they were about to walk back into the same company they once built together. Daniel checked the time on his watch. The board meeting starts in 1 hour, he said. My father nodded calmly. That's enough time. Daniel looked at him seriously. Are you sure you want to do this? My father smiled faintly. I've been waiting 10 years to do this. He picked up the folder of evidence and placed it into a black bag. Every document inside it could expose Victor Lang. Hidden accounts. Illegal share transfers. Secret investor agreements. Proof that the company had been slowly stolen. I shifted nervously. What if Victor denies everything? I asked. Daniel looked at me. He will. Then how do we prove it? My father reached into the drawer again and pulled out a small flash drive. Because this, he said, is the real proof. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What's on it? Recorded conversations, my father replied. Between Victor and the investors who tried to take control of the company. Daniel leaned forward. You recorded them? Yes. When? The night before the accident. The room went silent. That means, Daniel said slowly. Victor admitted everything. My father nodded. On tape. A small smile appeared on Daniel's face for the first time since last night. Then today changes everything. 30 minutes later, we were in Daniel's car again. But this time the destination wasn't an abandoned warehouse. It was the tallest building in the city. The headquarters of Carter Industries. As we drove closer, the massive glass tower rose above the skyline. It looked powerful. Untouchable. But today that power was about to be challenged. Daniel parked in the underground garage. Security guards immediately recognized him. Good morning, Mr. Carter, one of them said. Daniel nodded calmly. Morning. None of them noticed my father walking beside us. 10 years had changed his appearance enough that no one recognized him. We entered the elevator. Daniel pressed the top floor. The boardroom. The ride up felt endless. My heart was racing. When the elevator doors finally opened, a long hallway stretched in front of us. At the end of it was a large set of glass doors. Behind them, the board meeting was already beginning. Through the glass I could see several executives sitting around the massive table. And at the head of the table, a tall man in a gray suit. Victor Lang. Even from a distance, his presence felt intimidating. Daniel's jaw tightened when he saw him. That's him, he said quietly. My father looked at Victor for several seconds. 10 years, he murmured. Some things never change. Daniel pushed the doors open. The entire room turned toward us. Executives stopped talking. Victor Lang looked up from the documents in front of him. At first, his expression was calm. Professional. "Daniel," he said smoothly. "You're just in time." Then his eyes shifted. And he saw the man standing behind him. For a brief moment, Victor Lang's face lost all color. "Michael," he whispered. The room fell into stunned silence. Daniel stepped forward. "Surprised to see him?" he asked coldly. Victor quickly recovered his composure. "That's impossible," he said. "Michael Hayes died 10 years ago." My father walked into the room. "No," he said calmly. "I just stepped away." The board members began whispering to each other. Confusion spread across the table. Victor's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" he asked sharply. "A reunion?" Daniel placed the folder of evidence on the table. "No," he said. "This is the end of your game." Victor looked at the folder. Then he smiled slightly. "You should be careful with accusations, Daniel. You're not the only one with influence here." My father stepped forward. "And you're not the only one with secrets." He placed the flash drive on the table. Victor's smile faded. "What's that?" he asked. "Your confession," my father replied. The entire boardroom went silent again. Daniel connected the flash drive to the large screen on the wall. A recording began playing. Victor's voice filled the room. Clear. Undeniable. "Once Hayes is gone, Carter won't be able to stop us." The board members stared at Victor in shock. Another line played. "By the time Carter realizes what happened, the company will already belong to us." Victor's face slowly hardened. The calm mask was gone now. Only anger remained. Daniel turned to the board members. "You wanted a vote today," he said. "Well, now you know the truth." My father crossed his arms. Carter Industries was built on honesty. Victor Lang tried to steal it. The room erupted in whispers and shocked voices. Victor stood up slowly. "You think this recording will destroy me?" he said quietly. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "It already has." Victor looked around the room. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed. Not nervously. Confidently. "You're both 10 years too late," he said. The room went silent again. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Victor straightened his suit calmly. "Because while you were busy hiding and waiting, I finished what I started." My father's eyes hardened. "What did you do?" Victor looked directly at Daniel and said the words that changed everything again. "I already own Carter Industries. I already own Carter Industries." Victor Lang's voice echoed through the silent boardroom. For a moment, nobody spoke. Not the executives. Not Daniel. Not even my father. Victor slowly walked around the table, his hands resting calmly behind his back. "You see," he continued, while Daniel Carter was busy running the public side of the company, "I was building the real power behind it." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's impossible," he said. "I still control the majority of voting shares." Victor smiled. "That used to be true." He picked up a tablet from the table and tapped the screen. The large display on the wall changed. A financial chart appeared. Share ownership. Company voting structure. Daniel stepped closer to the screen. His face slowly changed. First confusion. Then realization. Then anger. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. Victor folded his arms. "Exactly what any smart businessman would do. For years, I purchased shares quietly through investment groups. Shell companies. Private funds. Foreign investors." Daniel's voice hardened. "You manipulated the board." Victor shrugged. "They agreed to sell." The board members around the table began looking nervous. Some avoided Daniel's eyes. Others stared at Victor with shock. My father stepped forward. "How much do you control?" he asked. Victor looked at him calmly. 51%. The number hit the room like an explosion. Majority control. That meant Victor could legally run the entire company. Daniel slowly turned toward the board. "You knew about this?" he demanded. One of the older board members spoke hesitantly. "Victor presented the acquisition plan months ago. You signed the documents approving it." Daniel froze. "I signed." Victor smiled. "Yes. You trusted me with the paperwork. And you signed exactly where I told you." Daniel's fists clenched. "You tricked me." Victor shrugged again. "You trusted the wrong partner." The silence that followed was heavy. For 10 years Daniel Carter had been the public leader of Carter Industries. But now, legally, he might not even control it anymore. I looked at my father. He didn't look surprised. Only calm. Almost like he expected this. Daniel noticed too. "You knew," he said slowly. My father nodded. "Yes." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Oh." My father reached into his bag and pulled out another document. "This is the original partnership agreement," he said. "The one Daniel and I signed when the company first started." Victor laughed softly. "That contract is ancient. It doesn't change anything." My father placed it on the table. "It changes everything." Victor's eyes moved to the paper. For the first time. He looked slightly uncertain. Daniel frowned. "What's in it?" he asked. My father pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. Daniel leaned closer and read it. His eyes widened. Victor stepped forward quickly. "What does it say?" he demanded. Daniel looked up slowly. His voice was steady. "It says that if either founding partner disappears due to criminal interference, all company control immediately transfers to the surviving founder." The room fell silent. Victor's face darkened. "That clause was never activated," he said sharply. My father met his gaze. "Yes, it was." Victor shook his head. "No. Because I never proved you caused the accident." My father calmly reached into his bag again and pulled out something else. A sealed envelope. Inside it was a printed transcript. Daniel's eyes moved across the first page. Then he slowly looked up at Victor. "This is the full recording," he said. "The part where you planned the attack." Victor's confidence cracked. "You don't have proof that recording is real," he snapped. My father smiled slightly. "Actually, I do." He turned toward the door. "Emma," he said. I blinked. "Me?" "Yes." Victor looked confused. "What does she have to do with this?" My father looked at him calmly. "Everything." Daniel frowned. What do you mean? My father's voice became serious. The recording wasn't stored on my computer. It wasn't in the office. It wasn't even in the warehouse. Victor's eyes narrowed. Then where? My father looked at me. 10 years ago, he said softly, I hid the original file somewhere no one would ever search. My heart started pounding. Where? Daniel asked. My father gave a small smile. Inside the birthday music box I gave Emma when she turned 12. The memory hit me instantly. The small wooden music box sitting on my shelf at home. I had kept it for years, never knowing what was inside it. Victor's expression suddenly changed. Fear. Real fear. Because if that recording was real, everything he built could collapse. Daniel looked at me urgently. Emma, do you still have it? I nodded slowly. Yes. Victor suddenly slammed his hand on the table. You're too late, he snapped. Daniel turned toward him. Why? Victor's smile returned. Cold. Dangerous. Because by the time you get that recording, I'll already have the company. And the way he said it made something very clear. This fight for Carter Industries was far from over. Because by the time you get that recording, I'll already have the company. Victor Lang's words hung in the air like a threat. The boardroom felt tense and electric. Daniel stepped forward slowly. You really think this ends today? He asked. Victor gave a small, confident smile. Oh, it will. He tapped the table in front of him. You see, the vote is already scheduled. Several board members shifted nervously in their seats. Daniel looked around the room. Is that true? He asked. No one answered at first. Then one of the directors cleared his throat. The vote was scheduled for this morning. Victor nodded calmly. To officially confirm the new majority ownership. Daniel turned back toward him. You're rushing the vote because you're scared. Victor laughed softly. No. I'm rushing the vote because I've already won. My father stepped forward. You haven't won anything yet. Victor tilted his head slightly. Oh. My father crossed his arms. Because the moment that recording becomes public, your entire career ends. Victor's eyes narrowed. That's assuming you actually have the original recording. Daniel looked at me. Emma, he said quietly. We need that music box. My heart was racing again. It's at my apartment, I said. Daniel nodded. Then we go get it. Victor suddenly spoke. Go ahead. His calm tone was strange. Too calm. Daniel frowned. You don't seem worried. Victor leaned back in his chair. I'm not. Why not? Victor's smile returned. Because I know something you don't. My father's eyes hardened. And what's that? Victor looked directly at me. That music box isn't the only thing people have been looking for. A cold feeling ran through my chest. What do you mean? I asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he checked the time on his watch. Right now, he said calmly, someone is probably already inside your apartment. Daniel's expression changed instantly. What? Victor shrugged. You didn't think I'd leave something that important unprotected, did you? My father's voice became sharp. You sent someone after the evidence. Victor smiled. Of course. Daniel turned to me quickly. Emma, we need to go. Now. We rushed out of the boardroom. Behind us, Victor called out one last sentence. You'd better hurry. The elevator ride down felt like it took forever. My heart was pounding. What if they already found it? I asked. Daniel shook his head. We'll know soon. My father stood silently beside us. But his expression was calm. Focused. The moment the elevator doors opened, we ran to the parking garage. Daniel started the car immediately. The drive to my apartment felt longer than before. Every red light felt like an enemy. Every second mattered. Finally, we turned onto my street. And that's when my stomach dropped. A black SUV was parked outside my building. Two men stood near the entrance. Daniel slowed the car. They're Victor's people, he said quietly. How do you know? They work for his private security team. My father looked at the building. They're already searching. Panic filled my chest. The music box. Daniel made a quick decision. We're not going through the front. He drove past the building and parked around the corner. There's a back entrance? He asked. Yes, I said quickly. Through the alley. We hurried down the narrow alley behind the building. A metal door led to the back staircase. I unlocked it quickly. We moved upstairs quietly. When we reached my apartment door, Daniel stopped. Listen, he whispered. Footsteps. Inside. My heart nearly stopped. They're already here, I whispered. Daniel looked at my father. We only get one chance. My father nodded. Daniel slowly opened the door. The living room was a mess. Drawers pulled out. Books thrown on the floor. Two men were searching the shelves. One of them turned around. Hey! Daniel moved instantly. He grabbed the man and slammed him against the wall. My father blocked the other one before he could react. The fight was quick. Both men were caught completely off guard. Within seconds they were on the floor. Daniel turned to me urgently. The music box. I ran into my bedroom. My hands were shaking as I looked at the shelf beside my bed. For a terrible moment. I thought it was gone. Then I saw it. The small wooden music box. Still sitting exactly where it had been for years. I grabbed it and ran back to the living room. I found it! Daniel exhaled in relief. Good. My father carefully opened the bottom panel of the box. Inside was a tiny hidden compartment. And inside that, a small memory chip. The original recording. My father held it up quietly. This, he said, is the truth Victor tried to bury. Daniel looked at it with determination. Then let's finish this. My father nodded. Yes. Let's end it today. Daniel held the memory chip tightly. This ends now, he said, his voice firm. My father nodded. Let's go back to the boardroom. I felt my hands shaking, but determination surged through me. We drove back to Carter Industries headquarters. The black glass tower reflected the morning sun. Board members and executives waited anxiously in the room. Victor Lang stood at the head of the table, looking confident. Until we entered. The room went silent. Victor's eyes flicked to the music box in my hand. You, he whispered. Yes, my father said calmly. And this, Daniel added, is your undoing. I stepped forward and inserted the memory chip into the main console. The large screen flickered to life. Victor's voice filled the room. Once Hayes is gone, Carter won't be able to stop us. By the time Carter realizes, the company will belong to us. Gasps filled the room. Board members whispered frantically. Victor's face turned pale. This is fabricated, he yelled. Daniel stepped closer. No, Victor. This is real. Recorded before you tried to steal Carter Industries. Victor's fists clenched. You can't do this. Daniel's gaze was unyielding. I already did. The screen continued to display more incriminating evidence: emails, secret transfers, and investor bribes. My father stepped forward. This company was built on integrity, he said. And you, Victor, tried to destroy that. Victor turned toward the board members, desperate. Do you believe this? He demanded. The room was silent. Board members glanced at each other nervously. One by one, they shook their heads. The vote had been nullified. Victor's control evaporated before his eyes. He stumbled backward, realizing the magnitude of his defeat. Daniel looked at my father. You kept your promise, he said. My father smiled faintly. I promised to protect my family, and this company. I stepped forward. And I finally get my father back, I whispered. Victor, realizing he had lost everything, finally fled the room in anger. The board members turned to Daniel and my father. We trust you, one of them said. Daniel nodded. Carter Industries will continue the way it should, honestly and transparently. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. Emma, he said, thank you for believing in me. Tears streamed down my face. I never stopped, I said. The room erupted in relief and applause. For the first time in 10 years, the company and my family were whole. Victor Lang's betrayal had failed. Carter Industries belonged where it always should have been, in the hands of those who built it with integrity, courage, and trust. I looked at my father and Daniel. And that, I whispered, is the end of our nightmare. For once, the future felt safe. Bright. Promising. And finally, ours. The music box sat on the table, a small reminder that the truth always finds a way to shine, even after 10 years of darkness.